tackling ghost gear in hotspot areas, how innovative partnerships are helping developing countries address lost and abandoned fishing gear. Today's webinar is brought to you by marinedebris.info and the EBM Tools Network, co-coordinated by OCTO and NatureServe. My name is Ray Everard. I'm project manager for OCTO. With me helping today is my coworker, Sarah Carr from the EBM Tools Network, and we are excited to introduce today's speakers. Before we get to the webinar, let me just tell you a little bit about Zoom's features. At the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a Q&A box. Please use this to ask any questions you may have for our presenters. If you ask at any, you may ask at any time, but questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties or just have a general comment, please feel free to use the chat feature. And a recording of this webinar will be available on openchannels.org in the next couple of days. All right, so let me introduce our presenters. Today we have Ingrid Giskes of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, Nick Malos from Ocean Conservancy's Trash Free Seas program, and Ben Neppers, co-founder of Bureau Inc. And I thank you all for being here today.
Thanks so much, Ray, for those kind introductions. Next slide, please. So today we've got an amazing gang presenting on the topic of ghost gear, a mix of experts and passionate advocates on the issue. And we'd like to update you on what the Global Ghost Gear Initiative has been up to since the last webinar that we presented in April, and also give an overview of some of the new partnerships that we've been forming over the last little while to ensure that the Global Ghost Gear Initiative really reaches that next level in being able to tackle the problem of ghost gear at a global scale. Next slide, please. So first of all, I wanted to give a quick overview again, just as a reminder of why ghost gear is a global problem and how we formed a global solution to address this. Next slide, please. So as you might remember from last webinar, in 2009, UNEP and FAO estimated that at least 640,000 tons of fishing gear is abandoned or lost in our oceans every day. However, it's much likely that this number is a lot higher today. A lot of recent research has shown, including, for example, studies from the ocean cleanup, as well as from beach cleans all around the world, that fishing gear does make up a higher percentage than the originally thought 10% of all marine debris in our oceans. In addition to that, ghost fishing gear is the most harmful and most deadliest form of marine debris because it is designed to capture and kill. It's often made out of plastic, a very durable material, meaning that it can live up in our oceans up to 600 years. And it's not only a problem for marine animals, but also for our ecosystems and for harvestable fish stocks and people's livelihoods. So it is a global problem impacting local communities as well as our ocean health on multiple levels. Next slide, please. Ghost gear often in the media is portrayed as being intentionally discarded. And I just wanted to put this slide up to show that really intentional discard, often linked with illegal or unreported fishing, is just one of the factors of why fishing gear ends up in our oceans. There's a range of causes ranging from weather conditions to malfunctioning of tracking systems, to improper gear design. But it's just really important to remember that mostly fishing gear is actually quite expensive for most people, and so fishers generally don't want to lose their fishing gear. So they're not really the villains in the story, and that's why also through the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, we think it's really important to include them in the solution. Next slide, please. So what is this solution? So in 2014, World Dam Protection founded the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, a global alliance of NGOs, private sector, fishing industry, academia, and governments, all coming together to tackle this problem on a global scale. And we work across the 4 R's: reduce, remove, recycle, and rescue, with a strong focus on prevention, so the reduce component, because we really believe that solving this problem really starts at stopping more ghost gear from entering our oceans at source. Next slide, please. We are a truly global initiative, both in the breadth of our project portfolio, as well as in terms of the participants that we have, as well as some of the consultations that we run on documents and guidance that we put out. And to show this, I've put up this map here with different dots. There's still some hotspot areas around the world that we haven't covered yet. So after this webinar, if you're interested in getting involved, please definitely get in touch with us. Next slide, please. Over the last little while, we've definitely seen the Global Goes Gear initiative grow exponentially. At the moment, we have 89 unique organizations, which is a tremendous amount of organizations that we've gathered around this issue in the last 5 years. And every week we have new organizations joining. And the strength of the Global Goes Gear initiative really lies in its participant base. As you can see from the logos on the slide here, we have some really big seafood companies, some powerful governments, but also innovative gear manufacturers, smaller NGOs, academia, all coming together. And that creation of partnerships, that collective impact that we've created by bringing those organizations around the table is really the strength of how we've created success to tackle the problem of ghost gear. Next slide, please. So this year in particular has been a milestone year for us. We've really felt like we've been reaching a tipping point, both in the recognition of the issue of ghost gear, as well as some of the project work as the policy guidance that we've been working on and tipping away on over the last few years that we've really seen come to fruition this year. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick overview of some of those highlights for us over the last year, we've launched a global data portal and a companion app for the reporting and tracking of lost gear. The data portal at the moment is the biggest depository specific for ghost gear data around the world with over 300,000 records. We've also seen the implementation of a best practice framework for the management of fishing gear through industry stakeholders, but also by governments. And we're also tabling it now at regional fisheries management organizations to really guide policy and the implementation of that policy. And last but not least, we've also really focused on replicating and scaling successful projects around the world for addressing ghost gear. And the bulk of this webinar, Ben from Burea will be presenting on that topic. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick snapshot, this is what our Ghost Gear Reporter app looks like. It's free to download from iPhone and Play Store. And basically anyone can use it, so individual stakeholders as well as industry, to report fishing gear. And once you've entered in your data, then, next slide please. Then that gets uploaded automatically onto our data portal. And this is the interface of our data portal that you can see here. It's publicly available online. I can type in the web address in the chat box after this presentation, where you can see your data all come together and also query some of the data on there. So it's a fantastic tool if you're doing research on ghost gear or want to get a better picture of the ghost gear situation in your local area. Next slide, please. The real kind of success over the last few months is that we've seen in the policy area. So in July, we saw the adoption of the global guidelines for the marking of fishing gear, which is a piece of work that we've started working on in 2014, really since the inception of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. The Global Ghost Gear Initiative implemented 2 gear marking projects, one in Indonesia and one in Vanuatu, to provide practical evidence into those guidelines and to ensure that once those guidelines were formulated and adopted, they would have real value for our stakeholders and for developing countries. So what was specifically adopted? There was a set of guidelines adopted on how gear can be efficiently marked and some suggestions for uptake and implementation of gear marking worldwide. It was also adopted for FAO, so the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, to take on a broader role in addressing lost and abandoned fishing gear by developing a global program of work that stakeholders like the Global Ghost Gear Initiative could help with the implementation. So it was a great milestone for us because now there's a clear UN lead agency to take forward the problem of lost and abandoned fishing gear. And also recognition that multi-stakeholder partnerships and NGOs can help with the implementation of projects, programs of work, and really the broader implementation of this policy. Next slide, please. A second really big policy win for us, which actually only happened last week, was the adoption of a ghost gear resolution at the International Whaling Commission. It was the first time ever that such a resolution was tabled, and it was building on our efforts over the last few years to put ghost gear on the agenda. But now with a specific resolution on ghost gear, the IWC has a clear mandate to continue to collaborate with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, implement best practices, and also continue initiatives around whale disentanglement. So I just wanted to show these two examples to highlight how ghost gear is really a rising star on the sustainability agenda across different policy fora, from the United Nations to the International Whaling Commission. Whereas a few years ago, ghost gear was barely mentioned in any of those fora. So it's really great achievement and really great to see. In terms of upcoming events, we're obviously all looking forward to the Our Ocean Conference happening in Bali at the end of next month. The Global Ghost Gear Initiative will have a lunchtime side event there. We also have an exhibition booth where we'll be showcasing our work, and we'll be hosting a dive against debris. We'll also have a number of our Global Ghost Gear Initiative stakeholders, including governments, make pledges at the Our Ocean Conference with renewed commitments of how they're personally going to address ghost gear by the deadline of 2025, which is the end date of SDG 14.1. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Global Ghost Gear Initiative has really been focusing on scaling, replicating, and formulating sustainable solutions. So I wanted to hand it over to Ben, the co-founder of Boreo now today, who will give us his perspective both as the chair of the Solutions Working Group of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, as well as a business owner of a successful business model that is Boreo. So I'll hand over to Ben now. Next slide.
Great, thanks Ingrid. So hello everyone. My name is Ben Kneppers. I'm the co-founder of Boreo. We're a company focused on creating innovative solutions to the growing issue of ocean plastic. And through that, I'm also the current chair of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative Solutions Working Group. Next slide. We really connected with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative when we became aware of how serious the problem of discarded fishing gear is. Obviously, Ingrid's already touched on it, but this is a global problem that with many plastics out there, single use being, having many alternative solutions, in the general scheme of things, fishing nets, the best current available solution is plastic fishing gear. So whether we like it or not, fishermen can continue to fish. So for us, focusing on creating a solution for a very large source of fishing plastic pollution, we really connected with fishing gear as an issue that's now confirmed as the most harmful form of ocean plastic. And through that, with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, the group that we really connected with the most, next slide, is the Solutions Working Group. So this is, as Ingrid already mentioned, is the group that's really focused on anybody that's out there that wants to do something about this actively can come to the Solutions Working Group. That is really a place for people to take action. It's a place where we have the array from very experienced organizations that are looking to build on successful models, to people that are just simply reaching out because they've become more and more aware of this issue in their community and they wanted to find something. And what we can offer is a really great space for an exchange of ideas, but further than that, the support to take those ideas further, connect you with people that funding that might be available for you to actually put this into action. And as Ingrid mentioned, we're really proud that we've continued to scale these projects, and in 2018 we've been already to deliver 12 projects. Next slide. And so Boreo really fits well with the Solutions Working Group because we are, I guess, in many ways, one of those projects. Going back to what we're about, we're really thinking about trying to take the most harmful form of plastic pollution, discarded fishing gear, and turn it into a really positive solution. Next slide. And the idea that my partners and I landed on is, what if instead of, with all the information we're well aware of this being a problem, we flip it on its head and utilize this as a resource and turn it into a solution. So what we've developed is this idea of harnessing this material that's been identified as the most harmful, and through recycling innovation, we can transform it into higher value positive products that can not only be a form of upcycling where we're generating a higher value for the material, but also education tools to show there is in fact solutions out there, and aspire, especially in the case of future generations, give the inspiration that they have planted in their head at a young age that there's things that we can do about these problems, and it's not just all about the doom and gloom. And then back to the upcycling concept, we can then operate as a shared value business. So we can then incorporate a portion of those proceeds to go back into those communities to address other issues while continuing to scale our program. Next slide. And so with the support from World Wildlife Fund Chile and the Startup Chile program, as well as other grants, in 2013, we walked away from our full-time jobs and launched what's now known as Net Positiva, which is Chile's first ever fishing net collection recycling program. So we partner directly, again, a really same value as we share with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative is to work together with the fishermen. So we partner directly with the largest commercial fisheries to the smallest artisanal communities, give them the resources and a formalized agreement where we now, when they have no longer a use for these end-of-life fishing nets, we give them the equipment and resources so that they can set aside those nets for us, where we then train teams of local workers across the coast of Chile to properly collect, sort, clean, and pack those nets, where we can then get them sent to be recycled. So we in turn get this raw material source where we're making these new innovative products. Through that upcycling and shared value model, we can then generate more funds for local programs, all while keeping our oceans cleaner. Next slide. So we started off with just this crazy idea of what if we could make a skateboard deck from ocean plastic pollution. That eventually evolved into setting up Net Positiva, identifying fishing nets as a large source of highly recyclable, highly durable plastic that fit perfectly with this crazy idea of a skateboard deck, to where we are now, which is the realization we have far more fishing nets than we'd ever need just for our little skateboard decks. And now it's really gaining momentum by all these new steps that we're working on now. And alongside that, we've been really fortunate to have two projects through Global Ghost Gear Initiative help us create that expansion. Next slide. So first, as you can imagine, for us, it requires a seed fund every time we set up the infrastructure and facilitation and hands-on work that's required to work with a new fishing community. So while we were recognizing that issue, and we can only scale at such a pace based on what funds we have, SatLink, who's a global satellite provider that works heavily with the fishing industry internationally, it has really taken action in setting up this zero impact mission to try to phase out any unnecessary plastics in their supply chain. And then when it came to these unavoidable plastics, they said, what if we could set out and sponsor what Boreo's doing so that we could actually offset the unavoidable plastics that are in our supply chain? So through that, we created the SatLink Zero Impact Project, where they're now sponsoring us to expand to additional communities, where in the next year we'll be able to collect and recycle more than 100 tons of fishing nets through our program, thanks to their financial support. And that was all set up thanks to the Global Ghost Gear Initiative Solutions Working Group. Next slide. In addition to that, so we're currently operating in Chile. We're operating across 5 regions, and things are going well, and we still have plenty of room to grow there. But in the meantime, we recognize a really great opportunity in Peru as well. Peru is the largest purse seine fishing industry in the world for the anchovette fishing industry. There's probably experts out there that might correct me, but that's as much as I've been able to be educated about. And so for us, we just always saw Peru as a really great next step for us to expand to, just being north of where we're already operating in Chile. So with World Wildlife Fund Peru and the support, again, of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, we applied for funding through the U.S. State Department that was endorsed by GGI. And now, thanks to that, we have our second solutions project that we're launching in the next month. That's, again, going to give us that essential seed funding we need as a small business to expand operations to Peru, where we're on track to expand to 2 new regions of Peru next year. We're projecting to collect and recycle at least 300 tons of fishing nets. Next slide. So all this going on, making waves. Borreo is a word that actually means waves in the native Chilean language. So we always connect it back to this. It's been a really fun experience. And next slide. Some of the results that we've been able to go through with our model in 2017. Next slide. We were able to collect nearly 140,000 kilos of fishing nets through our program across Chile. Next slide. And through our shared value model, those nets, the product applications we're developing, we've implemented with that material. We've generated nearly $25,000 last year in community project funds. So that's an opportunity to go beyond just this kind of strict business model of getting the fishing nets and say, what are the other environmental challenges these communities are facing? And then we can utilize these funds to partner with local active NGOs that then reach out to the community leaders to identify other programs. So this is varied from community composting to primary school environmental education to donation of photovoltaic panels for the local primary schools and so forth, really based on the needs of the area. Next slide. And so as all this momentum, the making of the waves has been happening, as I already mentioned, we're starting to get this realization we're having access to far more fishing nets than we would ever need for our own product lines that slowly evolved into skateboards, sunglasses, and a few other items that I was about to mention. And so when we started to realize we had way more fishing nets than we'd ever need, perfectly timed, we had companies starting to become aware of what we're doing, really sharing the values and appreciating our effort, and also happen to be using the same type of plastic that we are getting from these fishing nets. And so through that, we now have a partnership. The only investment we've taken to date is from Patagonia's Tin Shed Venture Fund. We've worked together with Patagonia's R&D team and materials team to develop what's now known as Net Plus material. So this is now going to be a branded material that's going to be the outcome of our Net Positiva program, where we can now partner with these companies that really share our values, have other responsible applications for our plastic that we can then focus on what we really care about, which is scaling our program and then supplying their plastic to us, where these companies are now committed to phasing out the use of the virgin plastic, making adjustments in their supply chain so they're not going to be using any single-use plastics or other unfriendly options, and instead committing to incorporating our plastic, where we're also designing end-of-life solutions for all those products. So a few of those products to mention here. Next slide. So now we have Carver skateboards. We launched the Ahi in 2015, and we're developing another model now. It's just another way for us to go from our little penny cruiser board to a much more robust and higher performance board that's been really fun for us to ride. Next slide. Another one, we partner with Jack Johnson, the musician, and Patagonia is now carrying in their stores is the Fishnet Flyer. So through Patagonia's supply chain, we connected with Whammo, who was already doing Patagonia's frisbees, and we tried to, again, just swap in our plastic from the fishing nets. And another really neat thing you can see in the corner there, the top right corner, is Jack also got those not only sold on his tour, but the stage itself, that top green that you see up there is actually the same fishing net we're making the frisbees out of. Next slide. We also made a partnership with Human Scale. As you can imagine, the furniture industry, it's really high performance, high-end products that are high quality, and they use a lot of plastic, especially nylon. So they identified nylon the same as a challenge for them. The same time we were looking for uses for nylon, we connected through a common certification we're going for called the Living Product Challenge. And through that, we developed what's now called the Smart Ocean Chair. And that for us is really just to start with them, where we see a lot more potential to find a lot more applications for the material in their supply chain. Next slide. This was a fun one. We connected early on with the founder of Jenga. He's also a big ocean lover, and we pitched him on this crazy idea. Let's make Jenga ocean. So it's another good chance to just really inspire the future generations. The game set's made from 100% net plus material, recycled fishing nets. And also, not only that, some of the game pieces have fishing nets on them. Some of the game pieces have marine animals. So in a way, the idea is that the kids are freeing the sea life from the fish net blocks. Next slide. As us being surfers and ocean lovers, this was a real one that we got a kick out of. Future Fins, their entire Alpha series, which is their main line of surf fins, high performance surf fin, has now phased out all their virgin nylon and switched to our Net Plus material. Next slide. This was a really big one this summer. We partnered with Costa, who makes really high performance sunglasses, especially for people that are out on the water. Their lenses combined with our 100% recycled fishing net plastic frames just was a really great match for us. Costa's already had their Kick Plastic campaign going on, where they worked with mutual organizations in our network, 5 gyres, to already look at ways to prevent plastic. And then when we connected with the fact that they really tend to have a strong audience that's out on the water a lot, also active fishermen, and then here's our plastic that connects with their story and mission so well. So that was a really great launch for us that you can check out on Costa's website. Next slide. And then the big one. So through Patagonia, we're really working hard with them on trying to find out the ways that we can really incorporate any way possible our plastic into Patagonia's product supply chain. So that's been a really exciting effort. Patagonia has been incredibly hands-on with our team, and open up their supply chain to us so we can really work closely and just understanding the standards of what they require, not just performance-wise, not just environmental-wise, but even beyond. I mean, it's been an incredible experience for us, and it's given us a chance to now, once we get these projects going, go from doing tens of tons, hundreds of tons, to now thousands of tons of fishing nets a year. And so next slide. So this is pretty much us at the moment, our little fishnet skateboard, getting ready to drop in on a very big adventure where we're now on track to expand to Peru in the next year. We already got our first supply of nets from Argentina, and continuing the ongoing expansion in Chile, where we're setting out to try to get to over 1,000 tons annually, and through that model, generating over $200,000 annually in community project funds. Through that shared value model. So alongside with us, thankfully, next slide, we've got the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. So the Solutions Working Group being involved in that, having our monthly calls, and the overall hierarchy of Triple GI has been a huge resource for us. If you're at all interested in getting involved in this space, check out their website. There's lots of publicly available materials they have. And it's just a really great place to start if you're interested in taking action when it comes to this global problem of discarded fishing gear. So I'm going to wrap it there. Next slide. You've got my email there. Feel free to reach out, and I think we'll try to end it there to keep room for questions at the end. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Ben. Great presentation. And I think, the Burea story is such an inspirational story, and also highlights kind of the key values of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative: partnerships, innovation, and really building on success and scaling gradually. Those are all 3 elements that we really try to live and breathe through the Global Ghost Gear Initiative every day in everything that we do. Next slide, please. And I can really, that image that you put up of standing there as feeling a little kid on a skateboard, dropping into the next big adventure, that's really what the Global Ghost Gear Initiative is about to embark on at the moment. So we were launched as a global impact alliance, and the strength of our partnership is really the individual expertise and passion of our participants. But we've always felt from the start that there always needs to be a lead partner to really harness that momentum, harness all that enthusiasm, and drives forward the partnership. And that's why we've welcomed Ocean Conservancy as the new lead partner for the Global Goes Gear initiative starting in January 2019. So the stewardship of the Global Goes Gear initiative will gradually start moving over to Ocean Conservancy. Next slide, please. So this transition period will happen over 2 years. And obviously wildland protection will remain involved and will be actively supporting the Global Goes Gear initiative and Ocean Conservancy during this period. And nothing around the goals, the ethos, or the aims of the GGI will remain the same. So for our participants themselves, there'll be no change in the way the operations are running. And we remain committed to tackling Goes Gear through the 4 Rs and hitting all those notes that Ben highlighted in his presentation. And I'm sure Ocean Conservancy is a well-known entity amongst everyone here on the webinar, but I wanted to hand it over to Nick Mallis, Director of the Trash Free Seas program, to just give a short overview of what Ocean Conservancy is about and how excited they are about this new partnership opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ingrid, very much. That's a very generous introduction. And as she said, I will give just a very brief overview about what Ocean Conservancy is and specifically the Trash Free Seas program. But I also just want to start out with kind of the why. And I think it should be pretty clear and obvious based on Ingrid's overview of the incredible accomplishments of the GGI over the past several years, and then just the innovative work of members like Ben and Barreo about why this is such an amazing opportunity and why Ocean Conservancy was so honored and privileged to have the chance to move forward in the partnership with Rhode Island Protection and as kind of the new lead partner of the GGI beginning next year. But so Ocean Conservancy as an organization, we just celebrated our 46th anniversary as an institution, working on the issues of ocean health for the duration of that time. And we really work on science-based solutions to tackle the biggest threats to our ocean. And so on the screen, you'll just see the 6 main program areas in which we work with many different initiatives and components fitting underneath each of those umbrella issues. And so for me, as the director of the Trash Free Seas program, next slide, please, we really focus on the clean coast through the Trash Free Seas. And our objective in the Trash Free Seas program is to really focus on tackling and providing systemic solutions to tackle the largest vectors of ocean plastic pollution. And we do that through a variety of tools, whether it's engagement, science research, policy, direct action, and then really measuring and quantifying impact. So those are really the pillars and characteristics that govern our work in the Trash Free Seas program. And we have 4 main pillars of that program that we utilize to accomplish these objectives. So next slide, please. So again, really thinking about how we tackle the largest vectors of ocean plastic pollution, that really underscores the science-based nature of our work. So this really is just a high-level overview of all of the different ways that plastic gets into the ocean that was published in Annual Reviews of Marine Science by Dr. Kara Lavender Law last year. And as we know, each of these buckets at the bottom has a number attached to it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in several slides, but really when we look at this issue, we think about how can we as an institution address some of these really large buckets through a systemic cross-sector collaborative approach that delivers quantifiable impact and moves the needle forward in reducing plastics from getting into the ocean. Next slide, please. For 33 years now, and actually just celebrating the 33rd International Coastal Cleanup this past Saturday, we have been working with partners around the world to mobilize individuals through the annual International Coastal Cleanup. So in more than 150 countries around the world, next slide please, we have seen over the last 3 decades an incredible movement on beaches, waterways, and coastlines around the world in individuals coming out and not only picking up trash, not only keeping trash off beaches, now the waterway, but also documenting the items they find to create the world's largest repository of marine debris data. And those data in turn are used to inform policy efforts at municipal levels, at state level, and then at international and national level to push forward policies like bag bans, more recently looking at straw legislation, and really use the data and the information collected by passionate volunteers to inform durable and systemic change. I think equally important through the International Coastal Cleanup is that we really use it as the entry point and starting point to create change and create an awareness among individuals that come out that hopefully translate that one-day action into lasting personal behavior change that really reduces the issue upstream by reducing the amount of single-use plastics and the amount of waste that's being generated in the first place. Next slide, please. We also know, based on a paper in Science published by Dr. Jana Jambeck and others in 2015, that one of the largest vectors of plastic pollution currently entering our oceans is from land-based sources. And the estimate that I'm sure many of you are aware of now is that roughly 8 million metric tons of plastic enters the ocean every year. And much of that at present is largely concentrated in rapidly developing economies where waste management, waste collection, recycling infrastructure and capacity does not match or is not sufficient to address the increased amount of waste being generated by many of those communities. And so in response to that, next slide, please, Ocean Conservancy in 2012 launched the Trash Free Seas Alliance, which brings together diverse actors from other NGOs, from the private sector, as well as from academia, to think about how you craft durable solutions to tackle some of these major factors leading to plastics in the ocean. And looking at the issue of waste collection and insufficient waste management in many of these places, one of the signature initiatives that the Alliance undertook was how do these diverse actors collectively come together to identify catalytic ways to support basic waste collection and recycling in many of these communities where it does not yet exist. And so following a 3 years work of the Trash Free Seas Alliance, and you will note on the bottom there that the World Animal Protection has been a core member of the Trash Free Seas Alliance for the duration of its existence. But over the last 3 years, our work has really been on how do you focus on driving that catalytic change. And just last year at the Our Ocean Conference in Malta, next slide please, we are very privileged to announce and launch the Ocean Plastic Fund, which will commit $150 million in funding to support basic waste collection and recycling needs in these high priority geographies, with the sole focus of addressing plastic pollution from reaching our waterways and entering the ocean in the first place. So again, this is really a model through the Trash Free Seas Alliance in terms of bringing together diverse stakeholders around a shared objective of keeping plastic out of the ocean that Ocean Conservancy is quite familiar with, and why we see the Triple GI as such an incredible and powerful platform to inform and affect lasting change on the issue of ghost gear. Next slide, please. And then the final example I'll give you is, again, the issue of microfibers. Fibers, many of which are believed to be shedding from textiles and apparel. We know that this is the most common form of plastic pollution globally by count. And so again, thinking about how you tackle some of these major vectors that we know have ecological, ecosystem, and socioeconomic impacts, we again went to this cross-sector shared objective model, next slide please, to bring together many of the leaders working on this issue from other NGOs, from the academic community, and from the private sector, in this instance, most specifically focused on companies and brands working on textiles, working on apparel, and in the home goods sector like washing machines. And so one of the outputs that came from this initial summit was kind of identified an actionable roadmap where academics and NGOs move forward implementing research initiatives to address the remaining gaps in knowledge. So exactly what is the full material flow of fibers going into the ocean, and what are the largest sources, which then inform how we actually intervene in those major sources, while simultaneously industry taking action to implement best practices to reduce any microfiber emissions through its supply chain, think about how it establishes industry methods for measuring fiber rates, and to design and invest in science-backed solutions that inform their material design, as well as their product design. So again, really leveraging this shared objective model and pulling together the assets and expertise from diverse stakeholders to create actionable initiatives that result in quantifiable outcomes. And so next slide, please. That really culminates with, I think, why Ocean Conservancy was honored to have the opportunity to work with World Animal Protection and thinking about taking over the lead partnership moving forward of their triple GI. I'm beating a dead horse at this point with what Ben and Ingrid have already said, but while the amount of gear in the ocean may not be the largest in terms of volume or magnitude, we certainly know that lost and abandoned fishing gear is without question the deadliest form of gear that is in the ocean. And so when we think about these major vectors, clearly fishing gear is one that requires swift and extreme interventions to reduce not only the ecological impact to the range of animals that are impacted by it, but also to reduce the economic impact posed to local communities and fisheries that also are affected by this unintentional catch. I also think it goes without saying that when we think about the issue of marine debris and ocean plastics, 10 to 15 years ago, I think for many of us, pictures of entangled humpback whales or seals with strapping bands around their neck were really the poster child for this issue. Since then, we have seen a strong focus on single-use disposable plastics and the very real impacts that those materials have as well, which obviously is a critically important shift in public awareness. But I think what the Triple GI has done so well is to really galvanize the global community at all levels to remind them the importance of this issue as well in terms of addressing a very real threat to our ocean that has very real effects to communities and individuals that depend on it. So lastly, next slide, please, my final slide, where do we envision going with the Triple GI? And it's an old saying, but don't fix what's not broken. And obviously from Ingrid's overview of what the Triple GI has done over the past several years, it's truly remarkable. And the increased engagement they have had with government in achieving very bold commitments to implement best practices in fisheries, to see new stakeholders coming on board throughout the seafood industries that can have very real kind of cascading effects through the entire seafood industry by adopting best practices. There's just so much incredible momentum that is taking place. We really see our role as coming on and supporting the incredible work that has already taken place and continue to ensure the trajectory and great success of the Triple GI continues over the next several years and on decades to come. And so for us, it's continuing to deliver that measurable impact that they have done to date, continue to drive global policy and engage in global fora where these issues are being discussed, continue to recruit new key stakeholders that can really have transformative effects on the issue of ghost gear. And then lastly, continue to just raise awareness about this very important issue that has very real, very devastating impacts on our ocean and all stakeholders that rely on a healthy and resilient ecosystem for future generations to come. So with that, that's a very quick overview of who we are and why we believe the Triple GI is such an incredible platform and our privilege to be assuming the new lead partnership in January 1 of 2019. But we very much see this as a partnership and look forward and are very thrilled to be continuing to work with World Animal Protection over the next several years as we transition the lead partnership to Ocean Conservancy, and obviously under the great leadership of Ingrid and Joel Boswick, the Secretariat, and the incredible members and leads of the working groups like Ben Kneppers on this call today. So with that, Ingrid, I will pause and hand it back to you, and just thank you all again for giving us the opportunity to share with you today, and Ingrid for the trust that you and your other members in World Animal Protection have in Ocean Conservancy to take on this tremendous opportunity and great initiative.
Thanks so much, Nick. Wonderful end to this incredible presentation. The Triple GI is such a lucky platform to have passionate and expert people like yourself and Ben involved, not only to share ideas, drive solutions, but also to step up to the plate and be able to provide leadership to the platform where it is as the chair of the Solutions Working Group or Ocean Conservancy coming in as the lead partner. And we at World Animal Protection, next slide please, have full trust obviously in Ocean Conservancy being able to really assume that new leadership role, harness all the enthusiasm that there is within the platform for this new phase of the Triple GI after 5 years of building the momentum, and really continue to drive a systemic approach and a solution to the problem of ghost gear worldwide, and provide that space where an exchange of ideas can happen and new partnerships can evolve, which is exactly what happened with this new leadership of the Triple GI. Ocean Conservancy has been part of the Triple GI from the very beginning, and it's wonderful to see someone within our own ranks stepping up to the plate to assume new leadership. And building on what I just said about creating a safe space to exchanging ideas, that's exactly what we always try and do at our annual meetings. Next slide, please. And so this year we'll be hosting our annual meeting right before the Our Ocean conference in Bali. So we'll all be coming together as the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, also with Ocean Conservancy joining us there in the leadership role. And we'll be talking about the great work we've done this year, building on our success, creating new ideas for next year, working our work plans up for the years to come, and also presenting on our 5-year strategy for the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. So this meeting is open to all Global Ghost Gear Initiative participants, but also interested people on the webinar today that might be already coming to Bali for our oceans. If you are interested in attending, please get in touch with Joel, our amazing secretariat, who's the magic hands behind this presentation, making sure that we all stay on track, and he can get back to you with a bit more information. So on that positive note, looking forward to our AGM, I'm going to close the webinar and open the floor for questions to my two co-presenters, Ben and Nick, about the presentation today, or any other questions you might have about the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, the future, or any of the amazing project work that Bureo has been doing. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening and for having us today.
All right. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ben. That was a wonderful presentation. It was so amazing, so fascinating to hear all the work that you guys are doing. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. And I think I'm going to start a first question to Ben. We seem to have a couple. He's answered some of them so far, but people are a little worried about the Patagonia microfibers. So if you can talk about how, what you're doing about the microfibers in Patagonia, yes, would you say
sure.
there? Sorry.
Yeah, so no problem. So everything we've been making has been injection molded solid plastic products. And that's the stuff that we're starting out with for Patagonia. I mean, textiles obviously is a huge industry. So to see the opportunity for expanding applications is definitely something that we're looking into. But it definitely has been a big hold up for us because of the microplastics problem. I mean, I think it's really important to point out that not only is Patagonia actively, stepping up and saying, yeah, this is a problem. It's a problem in our apparel line, but they're also actively investigating ways to prevent this. The immediate things we're doing right now, as I said, are continuing to stick to what we're doing now, which is making injection molded solid goods that then can be collected back at the end of life, so we can continue recycling them yet again into new applications.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a question here. I think this is probably towards Ingrid. Is how can I get more information about what is taking place in a specific country that supports the Triple GI program? For example, the Dominican Republic they give.
The best way of getting information is either on our website or by contacting our secretariat, Joel Baziak, and he can then put you in touch with the relevant people or provide you with more information. I also want to add that we are doing a complete revamp of our website that will be live right before our AGM. So keep checking in, because there will be a new fabulous website with lots of information to look at in the coming weeks as well. So that's probably the best way of getting the information you like.
Awesome. Here's another one. I guess you've already answered one for a question, but are any of your Alliance members researching the direct impacts of plastic pollution on HMS? And if so, which would they be?
I'm not sure. Joel, did you want to maybe take that question?
Yeah, forgive me for coming from a marine background. HMS means Her Majesty's Ship to me. Could somebody clarify what is meant by HMS?
I am not sure, actually. Well, if you want to clarify that question, feel free to email them.
Sure, I'll stand by.
Stand by. Okay, here we go. Let's try this one. Ghost gear removal projects have been going on for decades, as has the coastal cleanup. These efforts can give a false sense of mitigation, but do little for prevention. What are the obstacles to your organizations moving forward to promote a ban against monofilament and multifilament nylon fishing gear?
I think so. I think Nick might have more to add to this answer as well. But from our point of view, as I mentioned in the presentation, removal is just one part of the solution. So we always try and tackle the problem of ghost fishing gear from the 4Rs: reduce, remove, recycle, with the strongest focus being prevention. However, removal efforts do give us interesting data on the problem of ghost gear or plastic pollution globally that can help shape policy inputs, etc. So that's where, for me, the strength of removal efforts are. We also really, when we do removal work, we also make sure that we do it in hotspot areas, so where we do have a tangible impact on, for example, sensitive habitats, etc., and that when we do removal work, that all the data collected gets inputted into our global data portal. In terms of banning specific type of fishing gears, so we've developed the best practice framework for the management of fishing gear, which gives guidance on both what are the most harmful forms of fishing gear, both in terms of the potential of getting lost and the impact that they have when they do get lost, as well as providing guidance on how this can be prevented. So I don't believe a global ban or anything like that really works, because you have to kind of start at the level that people are at, and each fishing context, each fishing community, each fishing industry has a very different specific path. And so we always start by talking to the people, talking to industry and to the local communities to see what is possible. So starting from their perspective and from what their reality is, we then try and formulate innovative solutions that help prevent ghost gear from ending up in our oceans, or from providing alternative ways, such as, for example, exploring biodegradable fishing gear, etc., with them to what is possible in their local community. So we do work on policy work where bans, etc., are appropriate. We do speak up, raise our voices, and join policy efforts. But we always try and make sure that whatever approach we take is appropriate and practical and will be actually implemented in the long term by the industry partner or by the community.
Awesome. And we have gotten quite a few answers. HMS is highly migratory species, which sort of, duh, now that I think of it. But are any of your Alliance members researching, if you know, the direct impacts of plastic pollution on highly migratory species?
I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head whether or not any of that research is going on. Some of our participants, though, are doing their own research involved with ghost gear and other types of marine debris as well. I'm happy to follow up with some of our participants in the academic sphere to see whether or not any of that research is going on. Nothing that I'm 100% aware of off the top of my head, unless Ingrid or Nick, you guys know of anything that I'm not aware of. But I think it's a good question and something I'd be totally happy to follow up with.
Perfect. Does the Triple GI have any youth involvement programs currently available? And they are looking forward to getting Aguilita youth participants involved, if you do.
At the moment, we don't have anything that's specifically youth-focused. However, that said, some of our Triple GI participants and some of our contacts throughout that network do have similar things that they're working on. And I think we've done also some school outreach programs and things like that. So we do have some materials that could be used for sort of a younger generation to try to get involved in this issue. I'd be happy to follow up with some of our participants who are doing some of that work on their own that are part of the collective. Nothing that's Triple GI outwardly focused at the moment, but there are lots of organizations who are doing similar types of things in the space. So I can put you in touch with them if you reach out to me.
Awesome. And here's sort of a general question: what kinds of neck gear gets lost the most? So what is the greatest pollutant within the ocean with neck gear? Is the question.
So the top three types of fishing gear that have the greatest potential to get lost and to continue fishing, so ghost fishing as we call it, after they get lost are gill nets, pots and trabs and fads. So those are the top three gears that we focus our efforts on. And that's all detailed in the best practice framework as well that you can download from our website. Yeah, so those three.
Awesome. Those are the answers so far. But what sort of projects are you guys working on for the future that you're excited about is sort of a question that I have. What's something that you guys are really looking forward to presenting in the future?
For me personally, I've just come back from a project visit in Vanuatu a few days ago. And it's just really inspiring to see when you first start a project, it always starts with an idea, and then going back there and seeing actually initial ideas coming together and really being implemented by local communities and making a difference on the ground. That's something that I hope the GGI can continue to do and build on, because I really believe that if we take all the lessons learned from a local level and use those to inform our projects, but also inform global policy, that's how we can really make a difference. So my hopes for the future are really seeing more projects happening at local level, building on our lessons learned, building on the success we've had to date, exactly like Ben showed that Bireo is doing. Continue to be an innovator as well in the field, and then using all of that information and that practical evidence to see a change at a global policy level, both in corporate policy, but also United Nations and government policy. So I think those are really all my hopes and dreams for the future for the GGI, and it's great to see that I think they're very achievable and tangible dreams, looking at how much we've achieved over the last few years. And I really believe with Ocean Conservancy at the helm, we're in the perfect position to see all my dreams come true. No pressure, Nick.
Yeah, no, I would just underscore kind of the way Ingrid articulated that. And I think one of the great values and contributions the GGI has made to this issue over the last several years, I think for many years, the issue of ghost gear and specifically the fishing sectors were really viewed as the villain, as a group of stakeholders that didn't care about this issue. And I think what the GGI has really done is elucidate the fact that the fishing sector is oftentimes part of the solution to this, and they have to be a part of the solution. And we've seen many of the successful projects that have emerged through the GGI have done so because local fishers are at the core of driving those changes locally. And they demonstrate models that can then be replicated and deliver kind of triple bottom line benefits to the local economy, to the ecosystem, and kind of at a social level. And so continuing to scale the great work and the best practice frameworks and working with governments and other corporations to adopt those to see kind of the trickle down effects they have, I think is a really exciting future for the GGI, while simultaneously expanding innovative projects like what Bireo has done and demonstrated, and that it's not just about getting fishing gear out of the ocean or off the beaches, it's also about delivering a shared value and giving back to the local communities. It's a recipe for great success. And so that's all to say, I think the GGI is incredibly well positioned for amazing success moving forward, thanks to the incredible foundation and framework its current members and leadership have put in place.
Awesome. I agree. I think the future for the GGI is looking very great. All right. We have just two more questions here, and then I think we'll close it up. But so besides monofilament, there's also huge amounts of polyvinyl and polyethylene discarded in coastlines. Do you guys know if these could be repurposed in the same way that fishing nylon is?
I'm definitely going to throw that question to Joel, who led a recycling project in Canada and Stevenston Harbour. So he's our expert when it comes to fishing line materials and recycling.
Well, I think either Ben or I could probably answer that question best, but so Ben, feel free to jump in anytime. I think that nylon definitely has the most commercial value, so it's probably the easiest to set up a program that uses nylon because it is recyclable, particularly if you use chemical recycling. Rather, it can be recycled over and over again and retain near virgin properties. So nylon tends to be the sort of go-to material. But you're right, there is a lot of, say, polyethylene net. There's also polypropylene rope. I think that, I mean, the material can be recycled. It can't be recycled necessarily in the same way, but there are opportunities to do that. It's just a matter of making the economics work out. And often what you find is that the distance that some of that material needs to transport to a recycling facility that can handle it is what causes the economics to not maybe work out as well as they would with nylon. But I think the recycling potential, particularly with mechanical recycling, is there. Ben, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely, I mean, the key of it all is to separate it by type. Polypropylene, polyethylene, very easy to recycle, but as Joel mentioned, have a lower market value. Polyvinyl is a bit of a more dangerous material to recycle just due to off-gassing. I've heard mixed things. We've never tried to recycle it, but we've had no problems actively recycling high-density polyethylene nets. Have another associate in Chile actively recycling polypropylene ropes. So those are definitely doable as well. The key is to identify each type and separate it, because if you contaminate it with another type of plastic that has a different melting temperature, it can affect the quality of the entire batch of plastic.
Okay, cool. Final question before we sign off. Do you know of any Ghost Gear initiatives happening in the oceanic islands like the Cocos Island or the Galapagos?
We don't have a lot of members from the area at the moment, but we are, TunaCon's actually recently joined the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, and they're doing a fishery improvement project around the Galapagos Islands. So even though the partnership's still quite new, hopefully we can start making a difference in that area as well. But that's the only participant that I'm aware of. I'm not sure, Joel, if I'm missing anyone.
No, you're not. That's the only participant at the moment. And I mean, we're certainly open to more participants from more areas to try to tackle projects like that. I mean, the world's a big place. We're looking to expand into as many different regions as we need it, or as needed. And I mean, pretty much wherever there's water, there's fishing, and wherever there's fishing, there's some form of gear loss. So it's pretty much ubiquitous. But yeah, we'd definitely be interested in connecting with anybody in any geography that sees this issue as being a problem.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joel, for joining us, and Nick and Ben and Ingrid. This was a great presentation. And if anyone has any more questions, feel free to email Ingrid or Joel or Ben or Nick, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And with that, thank you all again, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks so much,
everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.